Good morning and happy Halloween from your favorite PSYOP psychological operation, Knitting Cult Lady. We are going to talk about all kinds of things today for the Cult Situation Report. I am Daniela, scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership, former captain and intelligence officer in the United States Army with 2 deployments. And the thing we do in the Army is every Friday we send a report up to higher headquarters. Being the expert on the bad guy, that is what my report is all about. I have written 2 books, Uncultured, about growing up in the Children of God religious cult and then going into the cult of the U.S. Army, Publishers Weekly and Carcass favorite, and Culting of America, a new Publishers Weekly and Carcass favorite, which is basically everything I know about cults and what is going on in the country right now. I do truly believe that both of these books can help you understand, because I promise you all, it is my level of Christian extremists that are in the White House. This has been their plan for 60 years, and now we're on this timeline. Oh, and Kristi Noem says that ICE is going to be out, I don't know, arresting trick-or-treaters. I just don't know how they think that photo shoot is going to go for them, but I feel like that might piss America off a little, so feel free to be really pissed off about that. The Republican dog does not like me telling you the secrets. Sorry about that. All right, the Jesus Army's final reckoning. Survivors demand justice as cult millions hang in the balance. Nearly 6 years after the collapse of the Jesus Army, once hailed as a radical Christian movement, but now infamous as one of Britain's most abusive cults, the ghosts of its past are demanding justice. Around 60 former members have stepped forward with new claims of sexual and domestic abuse, forced labor, because cults are always about labor, and psychological control. Whoops, sorry. My spy gear is falling apart. The Jesus Army, founded in 1969 by Pastor Noel Stanton, built a tightly controlled communal network where members surrendered their assets and autonomy to leaders who banned everything from Christmas to snacks. Ooh, sounds like Children of God. Women were made to work unpaid as domestic sisters, while others say abuse reports were ignored or covered up. Cult's gonna cult. Now, with 25 million pounds in remaining assets up for distribution, survivors fear that some of the very people accused of the abuse could still profit. Lawyers are scrambling to extend the October 16 deadline for victims to file claims as new survivors continue to come forward each week. All right, I think we're just gonna have to drop the glasses. Oh, the things I do for my art. Those of you who watch my content or who are cult survivors will not be surprised that cult members felt conflicted about exposing the truth about their circumstances. Reporting on the case, The Guardian states that Sarah, who appeared in the BBC documentary, lived in a Jesus Army communal house between the ages of 21 and 33 and is now pursuing a claim for abuse. Before I felt a measure of guilt, a measure of loyalty and indoctrination, she said. But doing the program and working with Gilly, a cult counselor who was also part of the documentary, has really, really helped. So very often, cult members feel conflicted about taking action or even just telling the truth about their former cult. Why? Because not everything is terrible. I always say there were good people in the sex cult too. You know, you have good, genuine experiences with other human beings. It can be hard to believe that they were all part of this system that truly is evil at its core, which cults, of course, are. So, Sarah, you are not alone in the mixed feelings. So many people coming out of high demand situations can relate and talk. You know, it was interesting when I started looking at the royal family as a cult, and it was when the interview with Oprah first came out. Like when I started like really seriously looking at it, because I could hear it in their language, right? The family and the firm and just all these different things. And, you know, so at the end of that interview, Mr. Knitting Cult Lady and I are talking about it, and he's like, yeah, but I guess like the queen, like she's fine, right? Like she's not like, and I was like, he was like, they didn't say anything bad about her. And I was like, oh, babe. It's probably going to take minimum of a decade for them to like really be able to even contextualize like who the queen actually was in that power structure that was controlling their lives. So there you have it. Talk about something else here. As hard as it was for Sarah to participate in the documentary, as hard as it often is for cult survivors to talk about their participation in extreme groups because of the shame and stigma associated with it, when people come forward, part of the reason so many new survivors are able to file claims is because the case has received a lot of publicity, right? So obviously, as we know, coming forward helps other people come forward. All of the cult survivors out there who have shared their stories, be it in documentaries or memoirs or just to friends, like you make it easier for other people to come forward and make it easier for other people who have been exploited to get justice. And sometimes for real with the books, because I'm publishing it in my book about Jeremy Spencer and being a member of Children of God and some of the things he did and was accused of. And I'm pretty sure that now means they can't delete my Wikipedia citation about that. On the note of justice, the Jesus Fellowship Survivors Association warns that justice delayed is justice denied, and that true closure can't come if the cult's money lands back in the hands of those who built its empire on exploitation. Okay, the moment it broke. Survivors reveal the exact second they realized they were in a cult. For years, they thought they were chosen, saved, special, part of something bigger than themselves. Then, in a single flash of clarity, it all shattered. A new viral thread in the BuzzFeed community has opened a window into these moments. The instant former cult members realized the life they've been living wasn't wholly enlightened or revolutionary, but abusive. From the outside, their groups looked wildly different. Suburban megachurches, rural communities, self-help retreats, spiritual healing collectives, even college Christian fellowships. But the stories that emerged, because all cults are ultimately the same, shared an unnerving sameness: isolation, control, and fear disguised as love. One former member of a New Age light work group remembered the leader telling her she'd manifested her mother's cancer because of low vibrations. Victim blaming. Another, who grew up in a Bible-based commune, said she knew something was wrong the night a sick child was denied medical care and told to pray harder. You can read all about that kind of medical neglect in my memoir. Cults hate medical care, as we know. I feel like this comes up every week. For a man raised in a doomsday ministry, the breaking point came quietly, standing in line for canned beans while his pastor drove off in a new Mercedes. Rules for thee, but not for me. Many describe those moments like a physical snap, something deep in the brain finally clicking into focus after years of fog. It was like my body woke up before my mind could, one woman wrote. I looked around at everyone chanting, and I suddenly saw it, the fear in their faces, not faith. Others say their wake-up call came in mundane places: a psychology class, a coffee shop, a stranger's kindness. But for most, the realization came at a cost. Leaving meant losing their families, their friends, their sense of belonging. One ex-member of a healing ministry recalled being told that leaving the group meant leaving God. She said, it took me years to understand that leaving them was the only way to find him again. And I have a quite intense chapter on exit costs, as well as entrance costs of cults in Culting of America. Experts, like me, say the pattern is fully predictable. Cults, religious or otherwise, tend to follow the same emotional architecture: isolation, shame, repetition, and a charismatic authority figure who claims to hold ultimate truth. Can be an idea, too. What's less predictable is how survivors manage to break free. In thread after thread, the posts are laced with grief and dark humor, but also resilience. Survivors say the moment of awakening isn't the end. It's the beginning of a long process of reclaiming thought, language, and self. Because cults take over your thoughts, change your language, and completely shatter your sense of self and identity. As one former follower Put it simply, the scariest thing wasn't realizing I was in a cult. It was realizing how easy it had been to end up there. For all of you survivors out there, you're not alone. It only takes one bad day, one decision, to give someone the benefit of the doubt. We hope those of you who struggle with self-recrimination, shame, and regret will come to a place where you can forgive yourselves and go check out that thread. The Cult of Consumerism and Capitalism, featuring Labubu. This week, there was New York Times guest essay written by Mirel Silkoff titled, Rescuing My Daughter from the Cult of Labubu. The gist of the piece is that the author's 10-year-old daughter's obsession with having a real, authentic Labubu turned into a teachable moment for both mother and daughter. No shade to the 10-year-old. 10-year-olds like toys. The author had high hopes for the Labubu quest to be an opportunity for mother-daughter bonding, but alas, it spiraled into a $90 fight with a claw machine at an arcade, followed by tears and an existential lesson on consumerism. Spoiler, the arcade quest was unsuccessful. The author writes that the next morning, her daughter sat down on our sofa, rubbing her eyes, almost looking hungover. I don't even know what happened yesterday, she said, dazed. I feel like I was crazy. I told her that I'd also felt completely beside myself and that she was definitely not crazy. We had been played. By what? She asked. And I thought, by a culture that offers us consumption when we need meaning. By the desecration of creativity through commerce. By the fact that the online world has infected us with an insatiable need for more and more instantly attainable stuff and a heedless rush of desire that can never be satisfied. But all I said was, there's a lot around now that makes people constantly think they want things. Those claw places are designed to make kids addicted, and they are bad places. I spent my childhood in a cult, but my talent manager, who did not, has her own memories of those claw machines and the high-stakes tension and energy they evoked in her, and by extension her dad, as a child. She says they remind her of slot machines and TikTok. And Lizy has always compared TikTok to a slot machine, but that's a story for another day. We thought this was an interesting and cute story, though because I'm Knitting Cult Lady, I'm going to be a little tiny bit pedantic and point out that a doll cannot be a cult. However, there's also a Labubu in my house. However, I often talk about the cult of capitalism in my work. It's a really tough one to escape. And like all high demand systems, it can be dangerous. What I think is different about cult systems like capitalism and white supremacy and patriarchy is that we cannot necessarily leave them because they are over everything. It's a good reminder that there are always fads and trendy things that society pressures you to own or participate. This is one of the reasons I like thrift storing, because there's no pressure on what to get versus like a mall where there's all this messaging, right? We certainly don't begrudge any child the ability to participate in a cultural moment or long for a cool toy that everyone has as a child who grew up without toys. So, like, let's not go there. But these are interesting moments where we can flex our muscles of avoiding groupthink and participating in activities or trends because everyone else is. The more we practice asking ourselves, why am I doing this? Do I really want this? Is this really in my best interest? When the stakes are low, the more comfortable we will be doing it in higher stakes settings. And we are all moving into those. Ultimately, the 10-year-old acquired her longed-for Labubu after earning the money via assorted entrepreneurial activities such as a lemonade stand to buy one. While she treasured it for the rest of the summer, she lost interest in it once school started back up. I don't know where the Labubu in my house is either. Recounting the story, Silkoff notes that after she bought the doll, I asked her to keep a Labubu diary for a couple weeks, noting how she felt about it. I wanted her to see how fads work, how you think the thing will change your life. But not much later, it's just become a piece of plastic clutter. It's a really interesting thought experiment, keeping a journal about what you think will change your life and how your relationship to it evolves over time. My talent manager has been trying to cut back on participating in consumption for the sake of consumption, and she said she's going to experiment with her own version of journaling this exercise to help her deconstruct from the cult of capitalism and crazy consumerism it engenders. And honestly, like, Gen Z is kind of leading this movement to deconstruct capitalism a little bit, which I think is very interesting. all about no Christmas purchasing because that's gonna make handmade gifts all the rage. Oh boy, Allison Mack to release a podcast. If you've been following the NXIVM story, you're probably familiar with Allison Mack, or if you watched Smallville. But for those of you who are not following along, Allison Mack was a TV actress who joined NXIVM and went all the way in. She's one of the ones who went to jail. She was both a victim of cult leader Keith Raniere and his number one lieutenant, Nancy Salzman, and she became a major abuser herself, because all adults in cults are perpetrators. She was instrumental in the creation and growth of DOS, the cult within the cult that famously branded members and insisted new recruits were slaves to existing members. Mack pleaded guilty to racketeering and conspiracy charges in 2019 and served 2 years in prison. Her new podcast is called Allison After NXIVM and is hosted by Haley Phillips. Talent manager Lizy thinks this is a great choice of host and is a big fan of the infamous podcast which Phillips co-hosts. The podcast will launch November 10th and is a 6-episode series per the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. I personally think people often try to tell their cult stories way too early. So I'll be interested. I'll be interested to see what Lizy thinks about this podcast. And the cult of MAGA. The government is still shut down. We're super sorry for all the federal employees. I mean, I live near DC, so it's a really big deal. Tomorrow's going to be another inflection point because they are not funding SNAP. And of course, we've just given $40 billion to Argentina to help a tyrant be reelected. So it's good times that we're having. I really hope everyone is thinking about communal care right now. I was watching a video from a Black creator who was talking about, like, this is part of why you tend to see white communities freaking out right now is because nobody knows how to do community care. I think this is something similar with, growing up in Brazil, like, where there wasn't good social services and you weren't relying on the government for pretty much anything. And communities know much more about how to care for each other. And we are, I've been saying this for a while as I'm studying groups and culture. We say it takes a village, and then we just go live in our little tiny castles with our 2.5 children and trauma bond with our spouses. And, like, we don't have community. I really, really think we all need to be figuring out that piece right now. I think it's, like, a really important part of pushing back. So it remains to be seen how it will shake out, but it already sucks, and the longer it goes, the worse it's going to get. Different states are going to feel it differently. There's national park closures, right? Employees being furloughed. SNAP benefits are going to affect his base tremendously, right? White women are the number one recipients of SNAP benefits as of almost everything related to DEI as well. I personally would bet he'll give it back in December and try to be like, Daddy Santa Claus is giving back Christmas. Sort of like he did with TikTok, and also very much because they want us divided. And if you don't like the MAGA moratorium on our government, call your reps, vote in your local elections, send emails, write letters, go to town halls, and let people who are elected to be your public servants know that you find them despicable. Be as annoying as you can. And I'm now issuing an everyday call to, like, white ladies, Karens against ICE. Like, we can do it. There are women, by the way, that are dating ICE agents to get photos of them without their masks on. And, like, these people are heroes. Oh, and also men doing it through Grindr. Heroes. In the meantime, let them eat cake. The White House has a new ballroom, gold, glory, and a dash of government shutdown chaos. Karens contra la migra. I like it. Karens contra la migra. Oh, can I wear this outfit? While federal workers are twiddling their thumbs during the government shutdown, President Trump is moving full steam ahead on his $200 million White House ballroom. Measuring a staggering 90,000 square feet, it promises chandeliers, Greek columns, and enough gold trim to make Mar-a-Lago blush. And if you've seen pictures of like the White House before Trump and after Trump, he's just been gilding. He's just been putting gold on everything. Privately funded, so not technically taking money from the shutdown victims, the project is already attracting comparisons to Versailles, Atlantis, and every wedding Pinterest board you've ever scrolled past at 2 a.m. Construction trucks rolled onto the grounds in September as the White House promised the ballroom would open long before Trump's terms end. Because why not build a gilded palace while the government hits pause? Architects say it's designed for historic events and great celebrations, but observes it could double as a perfect backdrop for a reality TV finale, a board game of Risk, or a very expensive game of musical chairs. In short, the U.S. is on hold, but gilding the White House is not. And, of course, he has knocked down the women's wing and is just, he's just being a tyrant out loud. They went to Arlington and they removed all the women and not white men from a list of notable Americans buried at Arlington, including Colin Powell. Okay. So one of the things I said this week, though, is okay, he's not being successful at a lot of the dictator things he's trying to do. So I also think he's dying and he's trying to see his legacy, right? He wants to see this ballroom. He knows he's not going to be around in 2029 either, right? He wants his arc to trump. Okay, let him do it. Let him do these silly things that aren't actually hurting anyone, because one day we'll get to pull it down. And that moment of getting to watch another president, turn the golden ballroom into, a place to feed the poor, or, knocking it down, or pulling down the Arc de Triomphe, we'll get to tear it down. The dictators never win. It's really, really, really hard to control people against their will all the time. And this is another thing. It's you're supposed to make some version, some segment of the people love you. And he's failing his own people. He has not done one thing for them since he got into office. Question of the week in response to my YouTube video on Susan Collins, Graham Plattner, and Ends Justifies the Means mentality at work in Maine. YouTube user Alistair McIntosh 9412 asks, what happened to the don't let perfect be the enemy of the good or no purity tests? So let's talk about how we reinforce dangerous systems when there are no consequences for people who get hate symbol tattoos and do nothing to remediate that fact before running for office. Because that's actually what's happening, right? And I publicly do deconstruction of all kinds of toxic systems. And I have told on myself for all kinds of things in my life. And nobody's ever come at me with purity shit. But I even had to tell Mr. Knitting Cult Lady this. Our Nazis are not better than their Nazis. Right? No, it's not, well, he's better than Susan Collins. No. If the Democrats can't put somebody up who didn't have a hate symbol tattooed on their body for 18 years, then maybe Susan Collins just needs to stay in office. This is ends justifies the means mentality. And this is where the left really messes it up. I'm betting there's at least one person in Maine who doesn't have a hate symbol tattooed on their body. And people say, oh, well, what about forgiveness? Yeah, forgiveness, sure. But first of all, why was he lying to us? You don't lie when you're asking for forgiveness. You apologize and you admit what happened. But also, he doesn't need to be rewarded with a Senate seat. And this is very a la the discussion of the Purple Revolution and just a lot of white Americans when they deconstruct anything and then just immediately start thinking they deserve leadership in whatever the new movement is that they've joined, because we have been trained to center ourselves. But a very interesting thing happened, right? I made a very, very mild video about Graham Plattner that basically said, I'll even give you drunk, stupid Marine thing to do. Although I'm much more critical of that now. But even if I give you that, why did you have for 18 years? That was all I said in the video. And then over the next 18 hours, as we found out, he did know about the tattoo. He did have racist and sexist and misogynist comments on the internet. He is exactly who we thought. What had happened on my video was all of these white people had come rushing to his defense. Oh, poor baby Graham. Like, maybe he didn't know. Like, oh, this white guy. Like, we got to give him the benefit of the doubt. No, we don't. And I heard this story once from a woman who told me that, you know, this one time in high school, she'd been isolated in a room by this dude, Matt, who tried to rape her. And then she got away and she ran into the party and she was like, oh my gosh, guys, you know what just happened? And everyone just laughed and said, yeah, sounds like Matt. And that's the problem. We're not going to get rid of the rapists. We're not going to get rid of the Nazis. But we need to change the culture to where we say Matt's a rapist, let's call the cops, and we're not going to be friends with him anymore. And if people like Graham Plattner couldn't count on all the white people running to his defense and being the devil's advocate, then he wouldn't run for office. He wouldn't have the fucking balls. And also, it's not white people's place to forgive racism. And it's not non-Jewish people's place to forgive anti-Semitism. Of course, it's not a big deal to us. It doesn't affect us. Okay. Tomorrow, good reminder for me, I have a women's veteran call. If you are a woman or femme or just not a straight cisgender male veteran and would like to be on our monthly call, you can email admin@uncultureyourself.com. It is just a support group. And then I'm going to the Los Muertos party. And there's going to be daytime salsa dancing, which makes me so happy. Okay. We also will be recommencing Cult Book Club on November 12th at 6:30 p.m. EST. We are starting our memoir round with a fiction book, The Other Boleyn Girl. And I chose that because, well, I'm doing a whole new round on tutors because, you know, best tyrant of all time to study, in my opinion. Also because, so one, it's written from the perspective of Mary Boleyn, who sort of leaves the cult, which I find fascinating. But also we just did our last study on the sociopath. And, you know, there's all these different theories about who was manipulating who in the Henry and Boleyn relationship, and I believe that it was just two sociopaths who met each other and took advantage of each other until one took off the other's head because he had more power and was a murderer. So that's where we're going to start our discussion. This week on the Cults and the Culting of America podcast, my podcast, I have two, Jamal Bruce joined in an extremely relevant conversation about the power of storytelling and representation, inspiring people to deconstruct and make changes in and for their communities. Jamal Bruce is a teacher in a high school in Chicago. They're getting a nice little package from me with a Saturnita and some stickers pretty soon. He said he was inspired by Uncultured a lot and to actually pivot his career and go into social work. It was a really cool conversation with Jamal. In Hey White Women, my other podcast with White Woman Whisperer, we talked about how to weaponize whiteness and use whatever privilege we have against the very systems that granted that advantage in the first place. And like, this is part of how we can dismantle systems of oppression, right? And we have been talking since the beginning of our podcast over a year ago about like becoming the Karens of anti-racism, or, you know, I think right now, Karens against ICE. Also, you know, joining my brigade of Britneys that are coming together to have a knit-in on March 8th, International Women's Day, angry knit-in on the mall in DC. Many of you in our comments have been talking about it. We're meeting on the mall in DC on March 8th. We have just started our planning. We're going to get a website up. So it's going to be Angry Knit in DC, right? Hashtag Angry Knit in DC. Our motto is going to be Not Today, Fascism, KNOT. And then it's going to be frog theme, because frogging in fiber arts is when you rip out your mistakes so that you can do it better. And it seems like American democracy may need a little frogging. So now that I've finished my Carmen Sandiego PSYOP outfit. I'm already beginning my frog outfit. So bring it, folks. Bring it. So we are going to have a bigger call with people at some point. We're just starting to get our planning exercising together. I was also on, not a podcast, but a live stream this week with Sons of Liberty, Big Sarge, who, you know, very much support, doing great things. Let's take back the message. Let's take back the flag. They don't get to own patriotism. And he has already asked me to come speak at the veteran protest on November 21st in DC. So, hey, if you're DC based, I will be there and I will be up on the stage this time. How exciting. I already told you about the other Berlin girl. And we're also for the month of October, discussing in November, we are reading A People's History of the American Empire by Howard Zinn, but like there's a, you know, illustrated version, graphic novel. That I'm excited to explore, and the other Berlin girl. And also not my book club, but I'm going to be a special guest on the Empowered Women's Book Club on November 5th, and they've been reading Uncultured. This is a book club run by my friend and author Joelle Tamraz. You can look her up. Her book, we actually have copies of that. Oh no. I don't think I have it with me here to flash, but she wrote a book called The Secret Practice, which we read in book club, and it is both a yoga cult and a 1-1 cult, and we have copies of that in the shop. GoFundMe, we've passed the 6K mark, hoping to make it to the 7K mark as we start promoting some Culting of America merch in time for the holiday season. And super, super grateful to everyone who's donated so far, invested so far, donated. A lot of that has gone to the making of the audiobook, because I know that is a big deal to a lot of you, and it is done. It is recorded. Yay! That has been my cult report for this week, friends. Situation report credits go to Meghan Picmann, my amazing admin, with contributions from my podcast producer, Haley Phillips, and my talent manager, supervising producer, COO of the Knitting Cult Lady brand, Lizy Freudmann. And we have a song of the week called Somebody by Global Warming, spelt GLBLWRMNG, Global Warming, like with no vowels. There you go. Just that word was just gone. Global Warming is a New Orleans-based author, producer, creative, and music business collective, changing the climate of the music industry while respecting, educating, and expanding of the culture. So go check them out. We love rethinking ways to make the music business famously unfriendly to artists, a healthier economic ecosystem. Extra special shout out to collective member Nate Cameron, who produced talent manager Lizzie's section of the audiobook for Culting of America. This song is a bop, and who can't relate to the need to have a buddy, a friend, a partner to ride with. Groups can be dangerous, but nobody can get through life totally on their own. Happy listening, and happy Halloween. And now for some nitpicking, I'm just going to show you my costume. So, you know, because I'm a PSYOP, I said, what would that look like in a costume? And I basically came up with knitted Carmen Sandiego. So this started life as a vest, and then I added these sleeves. I cut up a dress, and I added this knitted skirt cape. I actually then made that top into a knitted dress, but I'm not liking it, so that's going to be pulled out. Then I have my hat, which I just added some fuzzies on the top. It's falling apart. It's not very strong. Somebody made me this amazing belt that doubles as a hat band, and it does light up, although I don't know that we'll be able to see it. There we go. Woo, woo, woo. It's going to be very cool tonight. We got the mask in Argentina, as COVID was silently spreading, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with this skirt cape afterwards, but there we go. Oh, and Mr. Knitting Coat Lady is going to be the world. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Stay tuned. Oh yeah, that's my 101st combat badge. If you know, you know.